This is Writers Not Writing, the show where you can get to know your favorite writers and soon-to-be favorite writers by listening to them confess to the ways they procrastinate. Thanks for procrastinating with us. I'm Benjamin Gorman, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug tries his best to make me sound better. And each week we have a secret word to listen for. If you catch it, you earn the right to take an extra break at the time of your choosing from whatever is stressing you out. From NotAPipePublishing, welcome to Writers Not Writing.
Today's secret word is pineapple.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met, readers and reviewers. Today's guest is AJ Super. AJ Super is the author of the science fiction trilogy, The 7 Stars Saga, beginning with Erebus Dawning. It is a villain origin to redemption, maybe, arc across the 3 books. As a full-time author, they devour fantasy and science fiction in every medium with a hefty side of Asian dramas. With 2 bachelor's degrees, they've been writing since they were old enough to publish a staple-bound illustrated ABC book, which is still sitting around in a box of childhood memorabilia. They're active in SIFWA and the BSFW, the Brooklyn's speculative fiction writers group. Currently, they live in Idaho with their spouse, 3 fuzzbrain cats, and an unhealthy collection of slippers. And at what point did the collection cross the line into unhealthy, would you say?
I think honestly it was this Christmas when I refused to throw away like 3 pairs, and now I'm somewhere around a dozen.
I mean, I feel like as long as you're under 365 pairs, you can wear them all the time, right?
Well, that's the goal though, right?
Yeah,
because I love wearing my slippers, and I wear them outside and I wear them inside, and I have special ones that I wear outside even.
Yep.
Like,
And until you cross to the point where you can't possibly wear them all, which is, I cannot judge anyone. I have more books than I will be able to read in my lifetime. So at least slippers are soft, and I think that's an excellent collection.
Oh, the book thing is a problem for anyone who writes. So,
Yes, because I lack the capacity to read and write simultaneously. So I will never be able to read all the things I want to read, because I also want to write more than I can possibly write. So yes, I'll never get through it all, but I'm doing my best to read.
I think we all
everything.
are.
Yeah. So, as viewers of the show already can see, we come in costume to this show. That's a part of what makes it fun. But the folks in the podcast can't see what we're wearing. So tell everybody about that amazing gown.
Well, you know what? I do medieval reenactment occasionally with the Society for Creative Anachronism, if that's, not old school enough for you. So I decided to wear my 15th century gold Burgundian gown. It has purple trim, and on my head is like this giant double-horned hennin with a white wimple and a white veil.
Oh, it's amazing. Yes, the veil, the wimple is fantastic. So I wanted to match. So I, had to do some research, and I'm wearing this wham, which is also known as a Scheckenrock from the 15th century. That's what they called this kind of jacket. And it's got these sack sleeves that are so big they hang down way behind my arms, and they tie here on my forearms. So the sleeves of my shirt are still visible to my wrists. And then I have this droopy hat that looks like it would be a hood that would be attached, but it's actually just the hat kind of and a sock. And then I went with this embroidered silk kerchief on my chest here, and there are so many buttons between the shirt and this jacket, but I am ready for a night out on the town in 15th century Bavaria. So we are dressed to the, I don't know if they would use the phrase dressed to the nines in 15th century.
No, isn't that like from the 20s?
Probably,
the 1920s?
yes. But yeah, we're dressed to the 15ths here. So thank you for getting all dressed up. So it's a show about procrastination. What have you been thinking about when you think about procrastinating and getting away from your work lately?
What have I been thinking about? Well, I have a really bad habit of thinking about writing when I am working on a project. So like I daydream about like my next edit or my next plot point, and whatnot. But if I'm not doing that, I like to daydream about having lots of money so I could plant lots of plants in my garden, and so I can like take my family out to dinner. I want to be super, super rich
Yes, yes.
and have like this like very, very quaint like little cottage with a little cottage garden and whatnot. But on top of being super rich, I want to do something fun and useful, like invest in a big push to save the planet.
Yeah, yeah. The wealthy who are also saving the planet, which, that would be a nice change, wouldn't it?
That would be great, wouldn't
Right.
it?
Yes, yes.
I think that's what I dream about though, daydream about though, because I really like the idea of like there's this big huge garbage patch in the Pacific
Yes.
that's got microplastics and trash and all of that jazz. I'd love to find like a way to, like, if I was super rich, I'd do a think tank to produce a way to recycle those microplastics and pick up the garbage and basically have like a recycling station in this big, huge garbage patch.
And there are folks working on that. I read about a company that has designed some robots that sift through the water like filter fish essentially and collect and clean up this trash. I don't know if they go down to the level of microplastics, which is a kind of challenging issue in and of itself, but they are picking up a lot of that trash and then they bring it back to the boats. And I feel like that's the probably going to be end up being the way we have to do it is there's too much area to cover for
Yeah.
humans to pick up our own mess. Uh,
And I'd love to be a part of that. Like I've read
yeah,
some of the stuff that people are doing and it's amazing, but it's not as funded as it could be, you know?
I have an
Like
idea for a novel, a science fiction novel someday. We will get to the point where we need those plastics. Like, at post-peak oil, we need the plastics again, and they'll become profitable. And so I had this idea for a novel of, people 200 years in the future mining our garbage, going back to find all the, computers we threw away in the 80s that had all these valuable metals in them, and we just threw them away. We didn't recycle. Well, someday somebody's going to have to go back into those patches of garbage, whether they're on land or in the sea, and get that stuff back because we're going to need it.
that
So,
is a fantastic
yeah,
idea. Write that.
the garbage miners. Yeah, maybe someday. Yeah, I've got so many more. One time somebody said to me, how do you come up with ideas? And I was like, that's not the problem. The problem is time. I have more book ideas than I know what to do with. It's figuring out what comes next,
And oh man, do I feel that.
right?
Like I know what's coming next, but I have to work on this project I'm working on
Yes.
right now, otherwise I'm never gonna finish it.
And do you get to that place where you're going, oh, I'm so excited about the next project, and you're like, I can't tear myself away. I've got to finish this thing, but I'm starting to
Oh,
spend more time thinking about the next one, and that's, it's
I
dangerous.
am so there right now though. Like I'm in the middle of this really hard edit and I just want to move on. And it's the hardest edit I've ever been through. And I've been through some pretty like rough, like cut 10,000 words and rewrite your
Oh,
first act edits.
yep.
This one is basically rewriting the first act, cutting 10,000 words out of that, and then doing the same thing to the third act
Oh, yeah, that's
while
brutal.
making sure that the second like goes seamlessly through to the two. It's a nightmare edit. I have
Well,
been working on it
you
for
know,
months now.
and,
So
normally show about procrastination, not process, but this is, I think, valuable for our listeners to hear about. I mean, do you tend to overwrite and then cut 10,000 words? Is that normal for you? That's a lot of words to cut. I don't know that
I
folks understand how much, that's a huge amount to cut.
yeah, I I tend to underwrite actually, and then in edits I get bigger.
Yeah.
So cutting 10,000 words is really
Oh,
hard
it's
because that means
agonizing. It really is.
because
Yeah.
I if I can't reuse it or find a way to reinvigorate it, then those are words that's time that I wasted.
Well,
And
and
that's
you put
not the
those
good kind of
words there for a
procrastination.
reason. Like those, you felt the story needed those words at one time, and now you have to go back and cut them. And yeah, it's really killing your
Yeah.
darlings. That's a tough edit. That's a lot of words to remove. Um, so when you escape from that difficult, slashing and hacking at the book, what in pop culture is pulling you away from your work?
Oh, I am reading the Murderbot Diaries right now. Yeah,
They're
like
so
it
good.
is so good. I've never read them before, and I am on System Collapse. Like I am in between System Collapse and Fugitive Telemetry. So I'm waiting for it to come in my library. Somebody else has it right
Oh
now.
gosh. Oh yeah, that's yeah. I went straight from, one to the next. Like I was trying to make a point to review everything that I read, and that was one of the series where I was like, I'll just review it when I get to the end because I can't stop myself. Like they are so much fun.
Oh yeah, like the non-binary rep, the autism like kind of thing going on,
Oh yeah.
the the social anxiety of the main character of Murderbot. Yeah, like
Yeah.
seriously,
And
I
the
absolutely
distinct,
love it. It's so like it's not only spot on, it's so like relatable and so
yeah.
easy to read and so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Like,
voice of
and
the characters, they are funny, they are fun, and they're put in these incredibly impossible situations and they're still wisecracking and, yeah, Murderbot is just a wonderful character. Like I love this character who is designed to kill people, you
yes,
know,
exactly. This
and yet
character
is,
is, you're not supposed to like this character.
yeah.
It's a very like unreliable narrator, and yet at the same time, it's like, oh wow, what you thought was exactly what's going to happen. Maybe you're not so unreliable.
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, and becomes more and more relatable. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
I've also struggled to, feel comfortable in a social situation. I look at social cues around me and think, what is this person trying to express? And Murderbot can come right out and tell us that perspective. And yeah, it's these humans make no sense. And I'm like, I feel that.
Yeah, yeah, I totally, yeah. Murderbot has won my heart.
Yes. Well,
So,
speaking of humans not making sense, what about in the news? What's been going on that's been pulling you away from your work?
'cause there's so much right now. Like it's so noisy in the news
Yeah.
with all of the election stuff going on, which vote for the person who's going to save democracy, not tear it down. F
It should be
fascism.
far more straightforward, shouldn't it? Maybe if
Yeah.
you've got one viable choice, whether you like that choice particularly or not, if your other option is to never get to vote again, this should be a pretty straightforward choice. But yeah, it's going to be a rough summer, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not only voting for president, we're voting for the next appointments for SCOTUS and for maybe hopefully reinitializing Roe versus Wade in some way, shape, or form, and trans rights and all sorts of other stuff that we need.
Yeah.
And it's not just at the national level, it's at the local level too, because that's where the push to go red comes from, is from small towns.
Yeah.
It comes from small local politics.
Yeah, yeah, and small local politics of people who are very afraid and are, being told, hey, the world outside of your small town is far more frightening than you understand, and they're just being misinformed. I run into folks all the time who genuinely believe like our cities are on fire. No, no, they're not. You could drive up the road and see they're not, but if you live in a small town and you watch your news bubble tells you everything is a disaster, I think there are some people who are genuinely afraid, and that fear mongering works on a lot of folks. And so,
Well, and I mean, with social media being what it is, you get in this like little tunnel
mhm.
that tells you only what you click on. So,
Yeah. And this is how fascism has taken hold everywhere it's ever worked is, make the people more afraid of your the lies that you're telling them than they are of the very real dangers of an authoritarian system. And so I hope folks will be able to say I have these these concerns that are not that I'm not entirely satisfied with here in this element of my life or this element of my life, but I care enough about my trans neighbor. I care enough about the immigrant who's working on getting their citizenship who lives next door these are the people that I am going to vote for. So yeah,
Absolutely.
I,
Absolutely.
I am nervous about that as well.
Yeah, it's and it's to the point where my husband will start talking about something and I have to shut him down because the noise is too loud.
Yeah.
Like I know what I'm going to do when elections roll around, but until then, it's loud out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is healthy. I wish I could do that. Like I envy that. Like I, obsess, and it's not healthy because you're right. At the end of the day, all I can really do is, use my voice to speak out where I can. And even that I need to acknowledge the people who need to be persuaded are not going to listen to me. They're going to go, "Oh, here's this, liberal science fiction author." Like I'm not going to, and so it's my vote. And so I should take a page out of your book and say I need to take some distance from this until election, until I'm in that voting booth. But
Yeah,
it's tough. So
it
when
is
you are
tough.
stepping away, what kind of hobby do you, engage in that can help you go, I'm setting all of that aside. I've got a project here. What are you working on?
Well, between reading and watching TV and whatnot, sometimes I like to sew, and I actually do sew 14th and 15th century clothing. Like
That's
that whole
amazing.
thing about us wearing 15th century,
Oh yeah.
Burgundian and whatnot. I actually made one.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah, and I
amazing.
actually have the horned hennin with the wimple and the veil and all of that, and it is absolutely freaking spectacular.
Oh yeah, that is so cool. And if you want it to run fairs?
Ren fairs to SCA group events to like all sorts of places. And I always get the best compliments and I am always very, very visible because my headdresses are huge.
Yeah. I mean that's I can just imagine. That's one of the things that I love about whether it's the kind of Ren Fair community or I go to Comic-Con every year here in Portland and the cosplay community is so inclusive and supportive of one another. You'll see somebody walk up in like a Deadpool costume that cost them like $10,000. Like they spent so much time and effort, and somebody else got one from for $20 on Amazon. And instead of going, I am upset with you for not being as committed to this as I am, they're like, hey, that you look great, and they're encouraging of one another, and so I love that element where
I just saw two Deadpools going, hey.
right, exactly. It's the Spider-Man meme where you got two Spider-Mans and one's just like the half mask that they got, at a Halloween store, and somebody else has got this homemade costume that they sewed themselves, and yet they're both saying, "Hey, I am glad you're here." And I love
Yeah.
that element of the community, and I could just imagine folks seeing this wimple coming, walking down, and just going, "That is amazing."
And the nice thing about wearing big headdresses though is like back to like the Diaries being afraid of like social situations. People keep their distance from you. They don't like get in your face.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like,
My partner always talks about, one of the things that as a man, like I didn't even realize I had been trained to kind of walk in a straight line in a crowd, and that women are trained by and large to just get out of the way. And so my partner's really sensitive to the fact that, people will just step in her way, and she's trying to kind of make a point to not dodge out of the way of cishet white men and make us aware of these habits of ours. And I can just imagine in a huge wimple you're walking through a crowd and people are like, oh, I am aware that I'm
yes,
in your way.
absolutely. I absolutely take up space.
Yeah, good for you.
And yeah, and it's actually taught me to take up a little bit of
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
So, and we're allowed, like
yes.
we get to do that. And I'm going to be joined by a little cat.
uh Adorable. Who's this?
This is Littles.
Hi,
There-
Littles. Thank you for being on the
And
show. Oh, and
uh,
even rubbing the mic. That is what.
rubbing the mic. Thanks,
Yeah, so
buddy.
folks who are watching the YouTube show are like loving Little, and folks who are listening on the podcast are like, "What is going on? You're missing a cute cat moment. You really need to check out the show on YouTube." That that's
Little black
excellent.
and white kitty.
That's super cute. So, one of the questions I always like to ask authors, and it just functions as a kind of a Rorschach to get to know you a little bit. If you were a character in Dungeons and Dragons, what would be your race and class?
Okay, so I'm really not very creative when I play D&D. Normally, like I just play a human rogue or a bard or something really generic. And since I don't play often, I don't really know specifics. So you sent me this question ahead of time and gave me a link to places where I could like go and research. And I
Yes.
found the Eladrin.
And I had never heard of the Eladrin before, so that was very cool for me to check it out. So these are kind of wood elves, high magic users, those are really cool characters. Uh,
Yeah, they're like fae and elves in the wood. Like it's really cool. And I live in the mountains and I garden and the idea of flitting around in nature, it's just really kind of appealing to me.
yes, yes.
So, but
Uh,
there's another one that I really like. And they're called, and I'm gonna butcher the name because it's spelled Abeil, Abeil.
Abil, yeah, I didn't know how to pronounce it either, but yeah, tell everybody about these characters because I've
Okay,
not seen these.
they're
They're very cool.
They're basically bees. Like they're bee people that walk around on two legs and they're anthropomorphized bees.
Yes.
Seriously, I
You would love it.
garden.
The
I
image I
live in
found of one, because I had to look him up as well. When I looked it up, it was a queen character wearing essentially 15th century garb, and I was
I
like,
know,
"How
right?
perfect is that?"
I love it. And because I garden, bees and pollinators are like really important in my life. I mean, everybody's lives, to be honest, but yeah, like I'd either be an Eladrin or an Abeil.
Ah, I love it. I love it. Yes.
Very natural.
When you in your garden, are you intentional about where you plant in terms of where the pollinators, attracting pollinators?
I try to keep a good portion of the hummingbird stuff away from windows,
Yeah.
but that's about all I do because I don't want hummingbirds hitting windows during the day.
Yeah, I have planted some lavender, and then this is going to be very controversial out there, but we have blackberries like crazy. Blackberries go nuts. And so I transplanted some blackberries to a particular place in the garden that take a lot of trimming because they want to go nuts. But when they flower, they bring lots of bees. And then those bees then pollinate my pears and my plums and and so intentionally attracting and kind of feeding the bees is part of my garden plan.
Yeah, and I have an apple tree that brings in a lot of
Yes.
pollinators as well. But and that flowers long before any of my other pollinating stuff flowers.
Yeah.
But this time of year when it starts getting hot, I have mint, which also controversial in the
Yeah, yeah.
garden.
No,
It
I'm a
takes
fan.
over.
The mint is, yeah, it can go nuts, but the nice thing is for me, when the mint crosses out of it, I've got a bed of it because the neighbors planted it and it went under their fence and came into my yard. And I'm like, that's fine because when you go over it with the lawnmower, it smells wonderful.
I know. And I very purposefully trim it so
Mhm.
that so that I get that smell and I trim it once a week when I don't want it to flower. The other thing that spreads like wildflowers here is something called bishop's weed.
I don't know bishop's weed.
It's a very small, like arrowhead, variegated leaf with flowers that look kind of like Queen Anne's lace.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Queen Anne's lace, it takes a lot of water.
Yeah.
And they bring in a lot of pollinators, like not just bees, like little like flitting fly things and bumbles and you know hornets. But it it really makes my garden very active, especially this time of year.
Yeah, I
So
made the mistake one time early on in my front yard of planting a seed packet that was wildflowers, which I would tell everybody out there, a seed packet that says wildflowers could equally be labeled a seed packet of weeds. Like these are the kinds of wildflowers that will go nuts and take over. And some of them are, they're really pretty. But they are out of control. Like those are the
Yeah.
thing, I'm like, oh, and I didn't know the individual names of them. They were just wildflowers. Well, that weed packet has now been something I am competing with continuously in my front yard. But again, the flowers bring the bees that do the work that helps everything else
Yeah.
produce. And I went out and picked, a bowl full of blueberries yesterday in the front yard, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really, really cool because blueberries also, you're in Oregon. They take a lot of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm in the kind of high desert mountain area, and I can't grow anything but maybe blackberries and raspberries, and those are very hard on your feet if you put them into the
Yes.
ground near grass.
But you do get good apples up there in Idaho. So that's
Oh, yeah, Washington is better, but apples are good. I grew up next to an apple orchard. It's gone now, but we used to just go into the orchard and pick apples and
uh
eat apples straight off the tree. It was amazing.
yeah.
Like, what a kind of childhood memory.
Yeah, I don't know that folks out there know how many of the apples in your grocery store are Washington and Idaho. We think of, oh, it's Idaho potatoes. It's also Idaho apples. There are a lot of apples coming out of Idaho as well.
I would also note that Idaho potatoes are like 100% better than any other potatoes grown anywhere else in the United States.
Yeah, there are Washingtonians who would argue. I'm an Oregonian, so I'm not going to weigh in on that. I think
I lived in
Washington,
Kansas for a while, and we could only get Nebraskan potatoes,
not
and
up
they
the
were
south.
so dry and starchy. It was so gross. Like
Uh,
we'd spend the extra couple of dollars to get the bag of Idaho potatoes.
So
So
we'll put that out into the world. Folks out there listening, spend the money to get the Idaho potatoes. You'll thank me.
absolutely.
Well, let's go to our commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about lately.
Oh.
Special announcement time. NotAPipePublishing has always been committed to helping authors and readers find one another. Well, this show, which is all about helping readers get to know writers, just hit a milestone: 10,000 views on YouTube. So to celebrate, instead of charging authors to advertise their books on the show, I'm going to run your ads for free throughout 2024. If you want to make a 30 to 60 second video about your book, let folks know what it's about and where to find it, and don't forget your name and the title. I'll run one or two of those in our ad spot each week. Just send an MP4 file to the NotAPipe email address in the show notes. Let's fix up some readers and authors into reader relationships. 2024. More readers, more writers, more books.
Bold Rising. Algo and their team of enforcers take on the underbelly of Geneva megacity before being sent on a mission to Mars, a cesspit of corporate exploitation. Suong, a child laborer, must turn the heart of Agent Algo while the fate of Mars, her friends, and her family hang in the balance. Cold Rising. Cold Rush novella, available now on Amazon.
In 1883, the famous German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche put forth the idea of the Übermensch, the Superman. In my latest novel, Project Übermensch, Geoffrey Cannon is either a modern-day messiah or the product of a military experiment gone awry. Either way, the young, inspirational guru has mad powers and metaphysical skills. But Geoffrey's life as spiritual healer and speaker takes a dark turn when some devotees, young women he's had brief affairs with, are inexplicably murdered under grisly circumstances, and rumors of Bigfoot and Sasquatch abound. Amazon is the best place to find my books. That's Lonnie Busch, Busch with a C like the bear. I hope you'll check them out.
No one wants to live in a country ruled by wizards, unless the alternative is worse. Peter Watts, author of Blindside, says, a near-perfect blend of implacable horror, gallows humor, and ecological apocalypse. Nick Namatis, author of The Second Shooter, says, relentlessly radical and often hilarious. Cascade, Book 1 in the Sleep of Reason trilogy, by Rachel A. Rosen. Available now at bookshop.org, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and at bppress.ca.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with AJ Super. AJ, so when you have been getting away from your work and daydreaming and thinking about what has been going on, we were talking off air about self-care. And what have you been thinking about when you think about how to manage with all these various competing interests and demands on our time?
Well, honestly, balance doesn't exist. And it was pointed out to me very blatantly recently that there will be no point in time where my life will be a straight, flat line where things are just perfect and I'm not stressed and I'm not working too much or I'm not doing too little, or, balance is a constant scale that you have to like teeter-totter back and forth on. And self-care is part of that balance and trying to get that balance that doesn't exist.
The rebalance, the constant rebalancing.
Yeah, but the thing is without self-care, there's no way to rebalance from a stressful situation. And procrastinating, like this show is about procrastination, right?
Right.
Procrastinating is just my body's and my mind's way of telling me that I need some sort of distraction, that I have gone too far to one degree of my process, and maybe that there's, an edit I need to fix, or a scene I need to write, or even chores that I need to do that I'm not doing. And it tells me that if I'm avoiding those, I need some sort of space to evaluate that. And, generally when I get into that kind of, I'm procrastinating a lot, I give myself the grace to take the time and self-care so that I can work on other things other than a project or other than, stuff around the house, which lately has been a lot of stuff around the house. It's been less project oriented. So now I need to find how to swing that back, and taking a moment to, take a long bath or a long shower or paint my nails. This is me, of course, because I'm really into beauty and makeup and things like that, which is different for a non-binary person, I do realize, but it's a relaxing ritual for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am just learning this. So my son got me into painting my nails at Christmas. That was his gift to me, was nail polish, because he got into it in college, and it is very relaxing and fun. And I'm like, oh, it's also one of the things that I like about it, and this relates to some other kinds of art that I'm into that I've talked about on the show. It's transient. Like, this is not, I'm painting my nails and this will last forever. I'm painting my nails to chill out right now, and this doesn't have to be perfect and meaningful for all time, because this is going to last, a week.
Exactly. And that's why I do makeup, and that's why I do hair, and my nails are not painted today, unfortunately, but
mine are really gross because I just chipped the nail polish off working in the garden. There was nail polish for, I got married last Sunday, and so I had my nails polished to match my shirt. It was like silver, and I had like silver nail polish, and then it lasted a few days, and then I chipped it all off, but it was fun.
yeah, congratulations though.
Thank you.
I mean, and that's another thing, like, you have these momentous things in your life. Self-care during those momentous occasions is really important too.
Yes.
Like, momentous occasions are big, and they're big for a reason. You have people around you, you have, responsibilities, you have all sorts of stuff you have to take a breather.
Yeah.
And, you know, that kind of self-care where you take the time away from a difficult situation or a stressful situation, or even if it's not stressful, if it's just big
Yeah.
and
Oh,
takes a lot of your mind power.
yeah.
Um,
I came home
it's
and took some long naps. Like you know, it is stressful. It is, you know, you're navigating family and you know, trying to keep everybody happy. And it is certainly a stressful occasion, even though, you know, we were so happy that our smiled so much that our faces hurt. But it is stressful, you know, and so yeah, it was nice to come home and go, okay, and now we're married and we can just enjoy that and relax. But you're right, we have
yeah.
to learn how to relax in some ways, you know, and so you were talking about, you know, the long bath, the makeup, the hair. Do you have any other parts of your kind of self-care routine that have been helpful?
You know, what I really enjoy doing is like gardening.
Yeah,
Like I keep bringing it up. I like being outside and in nature. And during the winter here, there is so much snow.
yeah,
Like it's a ridiculous amount of snow. And I don't get to go outside and play with plants. And I have a lot of house plants as a result now.
yeah. That's not a bad
They're
way to go. So that throughout the winter, you've still got some nature indoors.
Yeah, I mean, but they're like eating all the space, and I have cats and they eat all the plants.
Yes,
So it's like a balance. Another thing, a balance trying to
yes.
make sure the cats don't eat the plants and that I have space for the plants and
Yeah, and figuring out which plants are cat safe. Crystal got a little plant for in the house, and then we realized if the puppies got to this one, it would make them sick. That became a front yard plant. So keeping track of which plants can be around dogs and cats who may decide to take to nibble on them.
yeah, I have a lot of grass style plants like
Oh yeah,
dracaenas and spider plants and stuff like that. The cats almost ate one of the spider plants completely down.
yep, yep.
So
Just it beckons to them. It's like here's a toy that's growing for you.
yes, it does. And I learned a trick for the big plants that I have on the floor. Take a couple of pieces of foil, put it loosely, you don't put it tight, but just loosely on top of the ground, on top of the soil, and water around the foil, and the cats won't dig. Or
They don't want to
so,
touch it. Yeah,
no, dislike the foil greatly.
yeah. Oh, that's it. Yeah, because they are sensitive to the texture. That's
Yes.
a good call.
So that was nice. I have a very large croton, however you want to pronounce that, that it's like a good 5 feet tall,
Oh wow.
and I'd like to keep it that way.
Right, right. Yes. You know, keep that one cat safe. Um,
Yeah.
so what's something that you that's come across the transom for you that you want listeners to know about, that you're excited about sharing with the world?
Okay, so my best friend, J.R. Creedon, debuted this year with their adult science fiction novel, and it's called Moondust in My Hairnet. And it's amazing. I got the chance to blurb it, and to be honest, actually, I got the chance to work on it as a critique partner while they were developing it, and I loved it then, and I love it even more now. Um, it's a hope punk story
Yeah.
about a lunch lady on the first lunar colony. Her name is Lane. And Lane's sister Faraday, who is an absolute genius, was the driving force behind creating the colony, but she was murdered. So now Lane kind of has to deal with the grief of trying to desperately live up to Faraday's reputation while also stopping a massive corporate takeover of the colony with a giant group of really amazing characters, and they're her friends. And there's it's about community and survival, and it has autism rep and LGBTQ rep and polyamory rep. It's super diverse, super inclusive, and like it's just, oh, it's such a fun story. I love it so much.
Such a great concept, like the lunch lady on the moon. Like I love that, you know, that
Yeah,
works in
and
the
and
cafeteria.
yeah, I mean, what exact kind of power does someone who is working as a a, a, a laborer
Mhm.
basically what can they do to stop the worst thing from happening, which is basically the corporate takeover of her sister's legacy.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So, Moondust in My Hairnet by J.R. Craden. Is that it's Craden's?
Yep, it's Creedon.
Creedon, J.R. Creedon, Eaden, and we will link to that in the show notes so folks can check that out. But yeah, I just love that concept, so I will have to check that out. That sounds wonderful. Um, so sometimes I remember to post a little poll from the show to get folks, weighing in on a particular debate. So if I remember to poll, what should be my poll for our show?
Okay, so this one has always fascinated me because people have a genetic component that makes
Mhm.
it kind of controversial. And so to cilantro or not to cilantro, that is the question.
I love it. And this is a debate in my household because Crystal does not like cilantro. She, is genetically predisposed, tastes like soap. She does not like it. And I love it. And I didn't know this was a new little bit of learning for me this spring. I got to go to Southeast Asia and I have always loved pho, the Vietnamese soup.
Mhm.
And she hates it and she hates the smell. Just hates the smell. And I didn't know that the reason is it's got a lot of cilantro in it. And that's
Yes, it
why
does.
she's just can't stand pho. I also learned that a lot of Americans pronounce it pho, which is the Vietnamese word for a prostitute. Don't order pho, it's pho. So yeah, you're ordering something
The
else.
more you know.
Yes, that was another little bit of learning there. But yeah, the pho there is just amazing. But they were telling us about the ingredients, and they're like, oh yeah, and they made it in front of us, and they were showing us, oh yeah, it's a huge amount of cilantro in every bowl
Huge
of
amount of
pho. And I
cilantro.
was like, oh, no wonder Crystal hates this so much. So yes, folks will have to weigh in on that. Cilantro, yay or nay, and acknowledge when you share your answer you are revealing something about your genetics. There was a podcast I listened to where they distilled the particular chemical that you have that genetic reaction to into a liquid and basically gave people like a shot worth of that. And they tested the people's blood first to know whether or not. And the people like me could just drink it and it was tasteless. It was just, water. And the people who have that genetic marker, they would film them and they knew the result right away. And the people would, like take this shot and then just spit it out because they just, their blood had already told the scientists this person is not going to like this.
You know what you should do is you should link that
I should see if I can find it. Yeah.
if you can find it. Yeah.
That invisible. I'm trying to remember which podcast that was, but yeah, it was really interesting about, what they can already tell just by, our genes, and know what our taste will be. So what else is in your to read pile these days?
I actually have one that I have been trying to read, but I've been kind of running out of time because of the holiday season. Um, uh, in the middle of summer, we have the 4th of July in America. Obviously, it's a big thing. And my family decides to visit during it.
Ah,
But the book that I'm trying to read amidst family being here is called The Archive Undying by Emma Mako Candon. And it's actually underneath my computer right now.
yeah,
And I have to return it to the library very soon. So I really need to read it.
I looked it up and it sounds fascinating. This is a novel set in a kind of almost post AI world. The AI gods in this world and the giant robots and stuff, and it sounds really cool.
It's starting out really interesting. It's got a prologue, which generally is not something I'm a big fan of, but it was done in such a way that it made me interested in the main character.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I've just started it. I don't know a lot other than post AI and lots of big mechs and machines and
Yeah.
and AI gods walking around and things like that. But yeah, I'm really excited to read it.
Yes, and I will link to that in the show notes as well. The Archive Undying by Emma Mako Candon. So folks can check that one out as well. So another question I like to ask authors about is, we live in this age where the algorithms incentivize, offensiveness. Like if you have the most shocking, hottest take, that's what gets you attention. And to kind of both lean into that and push back on it a little bit. I want to ask, what would be your contribution to the outrage machine? What's your hot take without
my
having
hot
to hurt
take,
people?
my basic truth, my rage bait is that life statistically must exist on other planets, but not just as bacteria, as sentient and industrious beings, like who use tools at the very, very least.
Yeah.
So Australopithecus, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
My husband is really into evolution, so I pick up things a little bit here and there. Anyway, so like tool users.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, in just the infinite numbers of stars and planets, there has to be at least one habitable by human standards
Yeah.
that maybe even mimics human evolution in some aspect. Like
In
seriously.
our own lifetime, we used to think planets were so much more rare, and we've come to understand that most systems have planets. So there
Mhm.
are so many more planets than we were aware of, which absolutely lends credence to that idea that statistically there are tons of worlds that are capable of supporting life as we know it. And even then, there could be sentient life that is very, vastly different from
I
our.
mean, yeah, like that doesn't even include the idea of evolution of like other quantities that
Mhm.
we can't understand as humans right now.
Yeah.
Like,
I
and the
read this
other,
great science fiction novel where the characters lived on a world where the light of stars could not penetrate their atmosphere, and so they grew up, blind, but it didn't prevent them from being intelligent, and so they learned to, measure the. It was a whole society of blind. They were kind of insectile, and yet they were able to measure, gravity, and therefore figure out that those stars were there. They just couldn't see them in our wavelength. And it was fascinating. Like the other creatures in the universe do not have to be us to be sentient. And so that was that, that is a cool thing to contemplate.
yeah, I feel like I've read that or know that book somehow.
It was Andy Weir's oh gosh, what was it called? The character, the alien is Rocky, is nicknamed Rocky. You know which one I'm talking about? It was not
Yes,
it's the
yes,
author
yes,
of The
yes.
Martian, but it wasn't called The Martian. I'll find it and link to it in the show notes because there's somebody listening to the show right now who is screaming the title. They are so frustrated with me. Not that
They're
it's
like,
not coming to me right away.
it's.
They're like, "Come on, you read that book?" And I'm like, "Yep," and I'm blanking on the title, but a really fun book, and Weir does a great job of kind of balancing real science. I mean, he's a hard science sci-fi author.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
My other hot take is pineapple on pizza is only okay if it's paired with pepperoni and jalapenos.
Okay, so I'm with you on the pepperoni. I do like a little bit of spice. The jalapenos. I'll go with green peppers, but yes, I like that a little bit of hot with the pineapple. Absolutely.
We're a spicy family here. Like jalapenos are a big thing in our household. Like salsas, and I grew up making like salsas on football Sunday, and so and one time my parents made a salsa so hot that it burned the seals off of the ball jars.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah,
One
that
time
went bad.
I tried to make a salsa and I did some pineapple in it too, which adds a little bit more, burn. I had grown habaneros and I didn't realize how hot this stuff was and nobody could eat it. It was so hot. And I was like, oh,
Send it over
lesson learned.
here.
Yeah. I was like burning the fingers. Yeah. It was so good. But yes, a good spicy salsa is a marvel. So
Yes,
where can
yes,
folks
yes.
find you and find your work online?
Well, I have a website and it's ajsuper.com, and I am also on Twitter,
Yep.
still, and Threads and Instagram, and my handle there at those three is at ajsuperauthor. I'm occasionally on Blue Sky at AJ Super. And if you really want to give me a mani-pedi, I'm on Ko-Fi at AJ Super as well.
Very nice. Yes.
Yes, and somewhere on Mastodon, I have no idea. I never go there anymore.
Yeah, Mastodon and what was the other? Mastodon and Hive. I created accounts, but I don't regularly use those either. But
I've forgotten that I even created an account on Hive, but I think I'm there too.
yeah, yeah.
I think.
Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Twitter, so and then your website. So I will link to all those so that folks can find you on the after the show. So
On the SM.
Yes, exactly. Excuse me. So who would be your recommendation for another guest I should have on the show?
You know what? J.R. Creedon, of course. Like, as a debut with a small press, just the basics, it's really hard to get your name out there and your book in front of people, but they are just amazing and eloquent and a lot of fun. And their book is, again, the Moon Dust in My Hairnet. It's effing spectacular.
Yes.
I'm being good with the swearing. I really am.
Yes, yes. Try. Yes. No, I will absolutely post a link to that, and I will reach out because I would love to have them on. That would be very cool.
Wonderful.
Before I get to our send-off, some people I have to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to Halisna CCO for their song Kids for the ad break. If you're in a band and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's song like Max's, so email that to me. Thanks to Doug, the producer, for making this show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention, Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com, check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it, and check out AJ's series, the 7 Stars Saga. What's the first book in that one?
Erebus Dawning.
Erebus Dawning. So check that out and give AJ that 5th star. Write a review for him. It really is helpful to authors to get those reviews. So please check that series out and take the 3 minutes it takes to write a review. And similarly for the show, click on that thumbs up. That would be really helpful. I always say I'm too old to say smash that like button, but if you want to gently click on the thumbs up an odd number of times, I'd appreciate it. So AJ and I want you to remember a few things as you're going into your week. AJ, what's your advice for everybody?
Well, self-care is procrastination at its best. I mean, if you remember to rest, hydrate, and enjoy the world around you, you'll be on that path to balance that you strive for.
Completely agree. I always say a book without spaces would be gibberish, and our lives need spaces too. So don't ignore the spaces. And third, no matter how much you procrastinate, AJ and I are still proud of you.
Absolutely.
If I take my time, I make up my mind.